Hello, and welcome to this masterclass on Rethink Leadership. Thank you so much for taking the time for yourself to learn a little bit about what is Rethink Leadership. I am very passionate about this topic because change is something that is constant. You either want a change that you want to go towards, or sometimes change just comes knocking at our doors, and we need to shift and we need to adapt the way we think and the way we lead. And today it is key to change with speed and not get stuck, because when we get stuck, that is the place that it leads us into frustration and feeling lonely and feeling alone. I have about 20 plus years of experience in the industry, and over the last 10 years in coaching and specializing in transforming people and in transforming organization. And the one thing that has become very clear for me in order to succeed is that we need a very clear methodology and we need a very clear framework that guides you, that helps you to actually make changes in a way that is sustainable so that you don't fall back into your old habits and old patterns. So in this masterclass, I'm going to walk you through that framework. What is it that you need in order to make the changes in a sustainable way? And what does it mean to actually rethink leadership so that you can achieve success and have the well-being that you so truly deserve? So without further ado, let's get on to this journey. And at this point of time, I invite you to switch off your cell phones and give yourself this time. At the end of this masterclass, I'll share a link with you that you can use to get in touch with me, and we can dig deeper on the subject, on especially your circumstances, on your goals, to look at what is it that you need the most in this framework to make the changes that is needed for you to be successful and to have well-being. So let's get started. A little bit about me. So my name is Deepa Natarajan, and I actually was in the IT industry for a long time. I grew very quickly there. And there came a point where everything that I knew about management and everything that I knew about leadership just didn't work. Because when I moved countries and I moved to France, one, I noticed that there was a different style of management. But not only that, what I realized is that the changes that I was trying to put in place in my organization was just not working. And for the very first time, like, failure hit me in a big way in my career. And so that's when I decided that I need to understand the dynamics of change, and I need to understand how can I make change happen for others. That was my mindset. Not realizing that maybe that I needed to change to bring the change outside. But that was the beginning of my journey to actually get into lots of coaching and lots of leadership programs, and I invested a lot of time in that. And I helped many organizations actually make transformations. What I noticed is actually every team that I worked with, they achieved like 70% of the changes that they were waiting for, which was actually a pretty good number. And they were quite happy with it. But when I met them a year and a half later, that transformation had moved down to like 50%. And then they would call me again, say, Deepa, can you help us do another workshop, do another series of programs so that we can actually go to our next level? Now, while that was good business, I actually wanted, my perfectionist nature wanted to actually get that 30% right. Like, what is it that, how can I actually make them reach that 100% of the transformation, liberate myself from the time of spending repeated time with the same client again and again? And I wanted to crack that code. And that's exactly when I decided to go back and analyze all the data from all the different transformation programs of teams and individuals that I had done, and also go back and refer to everything that I had learned. And that's when I found, and I created a methodology. And then I tested this methodology with 57 individual clients, and all 57 of them brilliantly transformed their lives. And so this is exactly what I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to share the entire methodology here with you today. So let's get started on that. So today what you're going to get is, what does it actually mean to rethink leadership? how can you make effective change? And there are like lots of mistakes that people can make, but given the time that we have, I'm going to talk about one basic mistake that people make when making change. And hopefully you will recognize something in you in this, what I'm going to share with you today. So let's go further. Here's like all the different kinds of changes that people asked for. So these are some of the clients, and they said, I want more co-responsibility in my system. I want to exercise more and have more well-being. I want more harmony, which is basically like, I find myself getting angry very quickly. I find myself losing my patience. Deepa, can you help me to be a little bit more zen? Can you help me to find that harmony within myself, and so that I could bring it in the meetings? And can I be a little bit more collaborative? No, that's not what people come and tell you, right? Everybody believes that they're more collaborative. And these are coaching clients who were actually sent by their management, who often came and said, and this is one of the goals of most highly driven people, is like, how can I actually go together with everybody, and how can I get everybody else also to be collaborative? So how do I make those changes happen? And a lot of people said, I want to be able to let go, control less, and have more self-time and have more well-being. So these were typically changes that people were asking for. Have you ever tried to change something in your life? Just answer that question. Is it a yes or a no? Have you ever tried? I know I have tried to change something in my life and I have failed. And I've also tried to change something and I have succeeded. And I bet you also have, right? The question really is like, how can you make that into something consistent, that when you really want something, that you know you're going to get it? So now before we go there, like, let's take a look at like what happens when we fail to make changes. Now, when we fail to make changes, the one thing is like, even if it is something as simple as, I want more time for myself and I want to actually go slow and I want to be more zen. Now, when you're not able to do a particular change, it leads to frustration. And that frustration, it just might be a little thing. I'm not able to reach my goal of walking 3 times a week. But that little thing, it eats and creates stress in our system. And it also leads to failed collaborations. Now, you might say, Deepa, you're just completely exaggerating. No, I'm not. Like when you're not fulfilled, right? What can you bring to the other person? What can you bring to the other relationships? When you're fulfilled, when you feel successful, you know that you can bring a lot more to that relationship. And all this, like when you're like trying to make changes, you do a lot to actually achieve your goals and to reach those changes. And there are, of course, like these mental barriers. And our mental barriers cause a lot of fatigue because on one side, the system is trying to accelerate, and on the other side, the mental barriers are trying to actually, break the whole system, like, put a brake onto the way you're functioning. And I say ultimately burnout, but a lot of my clients never actually reached burnout. Like burnout is an on and off stage, right? You say, did you hit burnout or not? But no, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like, there's this zone between like, I'm here and this is burnout, but I go so close to it, right? I go so close to being fatigued and I come back. My resilience pulls me back. But how often am I oscillating towards it? And how can I actually stop that? Because when you do actually make changes, it is literally, it's very empowering. Like one, you feel so good about yourself. Number two, everything that you say and everything that you do is very, very congruent. And you're in complete harmony, in sync between your thoughts and your actions. And that congruency is actually when you start to touch your potential. And that is when you actually, scale your leadership, and you have so much more to give in relationships, and it becomes so much easier then to mentor people, to support other people. And of course, like there's a sense nature of balance also there. So we all want to get there, right? We all want and want to feel that level of success where we feel both success and well-being, both at the same time. And when we are not able to make those changes, it just feels hard. And change is hard. Change is not just hard for you. Change is hard for me too. Change is hard for everybody. Now, just want to normalize that. So what we're going to look at here is like, what's that methodology to make the change? But before we go there, I want to talk a little bit about the people, right? Like, what is that personality that actually helps us to make change? And it's not about what is that personality that helps us to make change. You learn, your personality shifts as you make changes. But what I want to talk about here is the personalities that I attracted, the personalities that I was working with, and what were their traits. So these are the 5 key traits that I noticed as commonalities between all the senior management people that I was working with who came for coaching and said, I want to make changes in my life. Because like these typical traits, look at someone who's a top performer. They would have one of these traits, at least, if not 2 of them. And organizations and society pushes for development of these traits, and nothing wrong with it. These traits have a lot of positive benefits and a lot of positive aspects. Like, a highly action-oriented person is in action, getting things done. A perfectionist has a lot of drive to do things well, to do it better every time, and to master the art of whatever he or she is doing. If you take a look at the problem solver, for instance, the problem solver wants to be of service in this world through solving problems for others. And if you look at a future-focused person, someone who wants to create plans for the future and has a hunger to follow their dreams. And, these are people who, set the dreams, set the goals of the organization, create a plan and get people moving in that direction. And, you could be one of them or all of these. I can quickly recognize myself as a perfectionist and, of course, as someone who's very action-oriented. Which one of these do you resonate most with? Like, what is that trait that you feel is actually dominating you, that is like being your driver, that's running you, that, you're kind of like, I have an affinity to that. I can do that. Like, maybe you have all of them like me, but then there's 1 or 2 of them that are really quite dominating, right? So which one is that for you? Think about that. Write that down on a paper. So these 5 traits of a highly driven person are extremely useful. Nothing wrong with them. I just want to be very clear about them. It's excellent. It's great. They have a lot of positive aspects. And at the same time, they can cause us a lot of pain. And they can cause us a lot of pain, especially when complex problems arise. So let me take the example of a problem solver. I like all of them, no bias, but just given the time, want to dig a little bit deeper on a problem solver. Problem solver is someone who likes to bring solutions forward to problems. And of course, we always have problems, and to solve, right? That's what we do. The problem solver is the one who's like, I want to solve that problem, and I want to solve that problem, and I want to solve the next one. And so automatically, one of the qualities of a problem solver is they automatically become very action oriented, because it's like, I have something to solve, I have something to do, right? And I have a solution to go for. But if I don't have a solution, if I have nothing to do, then my action oriented nature doesn't really take over me, right? And so when problem solvers emphasize too much on this ability, what happens? You can almost immediately see the pain of that is they find themselves in situations, they find themselves in circumstances where others are not taking co-responsibility. And when I ask them hey, maybe you need to, create more co-responsibility in your system, and they'll tell you something like, well, yes, but I'm surrounded by people who are not capable of taking that kind of responsibility. So I don't want to give them that responsibility. I want to be the one who's in control of the entire rollout. But well, if you are going to be in control of the entire rollout, and if you're going to put everything in place, of course you're going to be exhausted, and of course it's going to be extremely painful, and 24 hours will just not be enough for you in a day. So, and I asked them, and if I ask the question like, how good are you a mentor? Well, the answer would immediately be, well, no, that's hard for me to be a mentor. Well, because others are not ready for it. Well, is it the others who are not ready? Or is it me who has not shifted and created that sense of how do I train? How do I form others? How do I get others to collaborate with me? What is it that I need to do in order to be more, to create that system of co-responsibility? And so when we emphasize too much on just one trait, we start to see the negative effects of it. And the negative effects could be as simple as start to intimidate other people, especially start to intimidate your bosses and your colleagues because of your ability to actually do things out there on your own, and making others feel totally incapable and at the mercy of your hands. And so these traits actually, when overused, cause a lot of pain. Now, I just gave you an example, and I don't know your situation and I don't know your circumstances, but what is the pain of your trait for you? I don't know what is your trait, the one that you just wrote down a little before. So, what is the pain of that trait for you? Think about it. Because this strategy, it runs it to its limits, especially when we're working in a complex system. Now, why in a complex system especially? Because in a complex system, one, we have very little data points. And in a complex system, we need to solve problems quickly. And if we don't, they can have pretty adverse effects. And because it can have pretty adverse effects, the amount of stress and the emotional distress that it causes is also quite high. And in a complex situation, when there's a problem, we need a solution, we need to test, and we need to test with speed. That is the key today in this world, is like test with speed. And that's what we are seeing also, like with the vaccine that's getting developed, is like we need to test with speed, right? So this system, these traits run into its limits in a complex system. And so what we need is actually, we need leaders who can manage the emotional, physical, and the spiritual needs. This is almost like the foundation of like the emotional, physical, and spiritual needs for me. Stillness. Stillness allows us to actually see things, make decisions from a point of view where data is not sufficient. Ever walked somewhere and suddenly an idea hits you, right? You need that place of stillness to actually reflect, get a high level view of things. Cyclic nature. I'm not going to go into the details of everything, but you get the point of it, is that we need to actually go towards the opposite duality of the traits that we have. So we need the highly driven profile traits. And this is also a highly driven profile person with the traits which are kind of dormant, just needs to be knocked up, woken up, and tapped into. And so what if you could tap into, like, what if the person who, that I spoke about, could tap into more of co-responsibility and not take the burden of solving everything on his or her shoulder? Like, what would that collective system look like, both at work and at home, if everybody was co-responsible for everything that's happening? So this is what is Rethink Leadership for me. Yeah. And now when you think of yourself, and what do you think, which one of these traits do you need the most today? If you were to just make a choice and say, wow, I think I need a bit more of that. I get quite a bit of stillness these days. And I could still do a little bit with a little bit more of stillness. I know that's what I need more. What is it that you need more of? Take a note of that. And once you take a note of that, then the question that you might ask is, well, Deepa, okay, now I know I'm this totally action-oriented person and I need more stillness in my life, but how do I go about creating that change? Is it just that, okay, I'm going to take away 2 hours in my day to go for a walk and do my meditation? Well, we all know that change is not that easy, right? How many times you've tried to do something very simple like that and it doesn't work, right? And so here's where I'm going to share my methodology of how you can make effective change. So the first one is what I call base camp. Base camp is understanding what are all the different parts and the mechanics of change. For me, there are totally 20 moving parts for change. You might say, what? Is it that complex? Well, it's not that complex. It's 20 different checkpoints. It's 20 different elements and frameworks that need to be put in place, no matter for changes that you have, where you have failed to make. Now, if you tell me, okay, I want to change the way I cook at home, or I want to actually delegate more. Some of these changes, you might just be able to do it. Like, Nike has that slogan, just go do it. And so when the just go do it slogan fails you, right? Don't question your motivation or determination. Just know that there are 20 different elements when you need to make changes. And this is what Basecamp is all about. And the second one is like understanding your drive. What is understanding your drive? Understanding your drive is understanding what are your traits, right? We saw the highly driven profile traits. So there's an assessment that I have. I could share that with you later if you get in touch with me, to understand like what are your traits actually. What are your drivers? Like, how do you function? Because it's important to know how you function, how you think, because that is key to actually making changes, because the way we think leads to decisions we make, and that leads to actions we take. So if you want different results, you need to change your actions. And to change your actions, you need to change your thinking. And to change your thinking, you need to know which thoughts do I need to change. And so for that, you need to understand your drive, right? Then the next module is the next part is actually intention to action. What is that? Like, we all have good intentions, right? I want to stop eating ice cream. I want to stop eating desserts, or whatever be the change that you want to make. Or I want to actually delegate more. I want to actually stop blaming myself. I want to be less of a critique. Whatever it is, right? You have an intention, but how do you put that intention into action? And it's not about technically, how do I stop criticizing people? But it's really what needs to change in me as a system. You are a system. Now, very often we cut off our heads and we think with our thinking brain, right? But now it's that, have you ever like tried to change something, like, let's say, for example, like you're going to give a speech, right? And you're not someone who gives talks often, but then when you go up on the stage to speak, you might suddenly have these knots in your stomach, or you might just suddenly feel a little bit of stress, right? So when you do something which is off your norm base, off your normality, and you're getting out of your comfort zone, we feel that little knot, that little tension in our body. And so when we create a strategic action plan to change, we need to involve the body, the physical body, the way we think, our thoughts, and our spiritual soul also. We need to have a change plan that includes all of them. Yeah. And then the next part is like experimenting change. Talk about experimenting change, because like most of the senior leaders who reach top positions, like they get promoted because they're a perfectionist, they get promoted because they're problem solvers. And then how can you, Deepa, take away that ability that I have, right? And how can you actually tamper, like, how can I tamper with that? And I don't want to mess with that because I got here because of those abilities. So we want a safe mechanism to actually experiment changes, so that the shifts that you're making doesn't have adverse effects on your business. Then the last but one part is accelerating change. There comes a point in the change journey where you actually need to start moving faster and gain that momentum to actually go full-fledged on it. And so you can only accelerate change when you involve your ecosystem, and I'm saying ecosystem is like all the relationships and the systems that you are coordinating with, change cannot happen in isolation. Change needs to happen with other people, because when you shift the way you do things and when you shift the way you show up, other people need to adapt and move with that. If your team changes, it's going to impact the other teams. And it's the same thing. The same principle can be applied to an organization. So when one team says, we want to make these changes to be more proactive, well, if you decide to be more proactive, which means you're going to stop doing some things, and that's going to impact somebody else in the organization. So we're constantly living in a very interconnected world. And so you need to involve your ecosystem there. Then the last one is finding the right balance. Finding the right balance is all about, it's not that I was this person before, like for instance, I was this person who never spoke up before much. Now I want to become very assertive. I'm going to follow this little journey that you mentioned here. And now I speak up all the time and I'm very assertive, right? But then, and I never want to go back to that person who used to be quiet. No, it is, how do I balance the both? How do I balance the fact that I speak up? How do I balance the fact that I don't speak up? How do I balance innovation in our organization, because our organization is moving towards innovation? And how do I at the same time balance stability? Because when you don't take into account the duality, we become like pendulums oscillating from one extreme to the other extreme. Oh, let's move from a place which is problem solving to co-responsible, or let's move from a place from which is centralized decision making to a distributed leadership. So it's not about that oscillation, but it's really, how do I get the best of who I was before and who I'm becoming, the old and the new? And that's what balance is about, is that duality. All right, so that's basically the change framework. And in Basecamp, it's about learning all these different elements, and in understanding your drive. This is the biggest part, actually. This has got like two main parts in it. Sorry, that's not the biggest one. So understanding your drive has got like two main parts of it out of the 20. Intention to action, this is the biggest part, like, getting your right change plan in place, which involves your physical body, your spiritual soul, your emotional health, and your mental patterns, and having a change plan that includes all of that, right? And that has got like 6 key points there, and then it's for all along. So there are like many moving parts, like there are totally 20 of them, so which need to be like taken into account. So without further ado, let's go into a little practical example of one person who, wanted to actually make changes. So let's call her Diane. So Diane was a typical highly driven person who had very high expectations of herself. She led a very, very dynamic life, was a financial expert in her company. And she came and she said she wants more well-being in her life. Like, she had a very high-flying career, great position, very dynamic life, very brilliant, knows her job extremely well, and lots of success behind her. And now it was time to actually have that balance of like, I don't want to let go of success. I want the success and I want the well-being. And how do I do that? The point when she came was exactly when she had gone through many leadership courses, and she had gotten cured of her cancer. And still she found herself going back to old habits and old patterns after she got cured of cancer. And when she went back to work, she said, I'm finding myself working the same way, working 15 hours a day, wake up in the morning, 6 o'clock, and 7:30, I'm checking my emails. I'm already in my office, and doesn't stop. My brain is always switched on. And this is the change I want to make. And so when I actually had this conversation with her, she was like, I don't know if I can ever make the change, because I work with people who are I'm surrounded by people who are completely not capable. They're not ready if I change, if I start to do less, and if I start to, or if I start to stop, sorry, if I start to stop doing everything, then they may not be ready for my changes. And I don't think others want to change me to change. And what if I start to do less? Would that mean that I'm a loser? Would I lose the success? Would I lose this dynamic lifestyle? Well, of course, you and I know the answer is no. But then that is actually the honest thinking. Be honest with yourself. How we're all scared to let go of that that driven nature, to take our foot off the pedal a little bit, right? But when you don't involve others, right? She had tried so many things, but she was never involving others in the changes that she wanted to make. She was trying to do everything on her own. But when she went through the program, and then, so one of the things that she realized, she's like, not integrating relationships at work, that was not working. So you need to integrate relationships to work for you. You need to actually, when you're making changes, you need to have a lot of dialogues, not with others first, but with yourself. Did she believe that others were doing their best around her? Yes or no? No, of course not. And so how can she change? She had to change how she saw others first before she could even say, I need to get them to change. And this is how I'm going to train them to change. This is how I'm going to support them to change. Because if I support them to change to the way I need to be, then I can change also. And so that's very key, is to you need to train your ecosystem to support you. And when she got on the change journey, well-being is something very easy, right? But she went and asked 5 different people. She said, what is the one behavior that I need to change if I want to integrate well-being in my life? So here's the tip, right? You might have done lots of 360-degree feedbacks. People must have given you feedbacks. But if you really want to change something, whatever it is, delegating more or be more calmer, practice more stillness, whatever it is, go and ask 5 people around you. What is the one behavior that you need to change in order to reach your goal, whatever that goal is? And you will see that people see you with much more clarity than you see yourself. And that answer will give you your first footstep into, that's the change that I need to implement. Because it's not that, I want to be more still, or I want to actually have delegate more. And what are the steps for delegating more? Those are things how to do it. Because if you were able to implement that, you wouldn't be here in this masterclass. So note down what is that change and go and ask 5 people, what's the one thing I need to change in order to reach that goal? And I want to leave you before we go on further with this little poem that I like a lot. It goes a bit like this. The hand moves and the fire's whirling takes different shapes. The hand moves and the fire's whirling takes different shapes. All things change when we do. Yeah. So change starts with you. It's only when you recognize that the solution starts with you, then you can aspire to be the leader that you really want to be. So start there. But when I go back now, right, one thing that that Diane did was she came and she reached out for support, right? And that is one thing that we all don't do very, very easily. And I'd be the first guilty person on that. Is asking for help is not easy, right? Telling somebody that I can't do this on my own, but I need support, that's not easy. But she crossed that. She just sent me a message and we got onto a call for 15 minutes. And then she was like, okay, I'm on this program and I want to do this. I wanted to share with you. So, this is literally the gap analysis that we went through. And so these are the 20 different elements that helps you to actually make changes. So she had set her objectives. She went through a leadership program. She knew exactly like the changes. She knew some of those parts of changes that need to be done because she'd done quite a bit of leadership courses. But then she wasn't able to do all of them. And, old habits, old thinking patterns took over. And she found herself like not making the changes that she wanted. And when you look at the facts, yes, her highly active life had somehow contributed to the stress, the responsibilities that she was carrying. She didn't have any time to take care of her parents' health, spend as much time as she wanted with them who were growing older. And she needed to get a second surgery done. And she said, Deepa, I don't have time for this prevention surgery. This is where she was. But then we stacked it up together. And then if she had done that, because the 10-week program, in 6 weeks, she made all the changes needed in her system, both at work and at home. And she found that balance. And, she sent me pictures from beach and during COVID times. And she said, listen, I'm spending most of my time here on this beach and I'm working from here, from my house over here. And I have all this work, which I have very well managed to manage with my team. And now my family also helps me at home and in everything that I do. And I have more time to take care. So, when you get all these 20 different elements in time, like in a very structured way, then you could reach your goals in 10 weeks time. So think about it. Think about, how do you want to shift the way you lead? I think this concept of rethinking leadership, integrating the both dualities of the doing and the being, like this is literally key for me in these times. I bet it is for you too. It's key for a lot of people that I see. So think about it. Where is it that you are actually burdening your system on? Where do you need to move more towards? And if you want to dig deeper, book a free strategy call with me, and I'll be happy to do your gap analysis and tell you exactly what is it from those 20 different elements that you need to implement to actually get you the success that you truly deserve. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And I look forward to talking to you soon.